Hey everybody, really excited about this conversation. I think specs and standards uh, that we have existing and those to come uh, need to find adoption. So, how does that happen? There's a lot of cool things that the Bitcoin protocol allows people to do, but are often underused. For example, there's this unified QR code stuff, and it's basically BIP21 with a Lightning parameter, and that's been around for a long time, and it opens up a lot of opportunities for cool UX. So we're going to be talking about some kind of things like that.
Yeah, thanks for the intro, Johns. This is Christoph here. We're all going to speak. Well, some of us are going to speak from the same account here. If anyone's confused, there are like 4 people behind the Bitcoin design account here right now. So thanks for joining in. I hope the topic is some of you might already be super savvy with what standards are, what they mean, how they work, what their role is, but I was thinking we can split this up into some sub-conversations here, with the first piece simply being about what standards are, then maybe also where they come from, also give examples of kind of some of these standards that that exist and that we are maybe already familiar with, that we already rely on and maybe don't even know about. And then some of the standards are maybe in discussion and coming up, and then what we can do to adopt them.
Do we also talk about the difference between specs and standards? Because they are quite different in ways in terms of how they get enforced or applied.
So I think I wouldn't want to have a conversation about exactly what each word in which context. I don't think that's particularly practical right now. But let's start with what standards are. So in Bitcoin we have, and this is kind of just technically speaking, there's a thing called a Bitcoin improvement proposal. That is for pretty much for on-chain Bitcoin, right? That is like there's a certain technology and it works a certain way, and if a change needs to be made the way it works, then somebody creates a proposal and there's heavy discussion around it, and the proposal describes the purpose of this and how it would work, and then has various technical details to support it, along with examples, benefits, and all these things. And then it gets discussed, and maybe it gets agreed upon, maybe it gets revised, maybe it gets rejected. Sometimes things get actually accepted, and still they're really recommended to not be implemented either. So it's not a super clean process, but I think it works pretty well. And then when something is kind of generally agreed upon, the ecosystem then it actually needs to be implemented in all of the different software and whatnot. Outside of the BIPs, we also have a thing called the Bolt, which is the basis of Lightning technology, which are Lightning network improvement proposals in a way. And then we have a thing called blips. And Stephen, what's the difference between bolts and blips? I think earlier you had a good explanation of that.
Oh yeah. Hey, Stephen here. I think of the bolts and the blips as kind of like, the bolt is if you don't support pretty much all of the bolts, you're not really a Lightning node. Someone jump in and correct me if I'm wrong on that, but you kind of need to support a wide range of bolts to be interoperable with other Lightning nodes on the network. Blips are sort of like these optional improvements to Lightning. So like an example of a bolt would be like the things that actually like make Lightning routing work. But like Hampus had this really from Blixwald had this really cool blip that was just this thing called name desk, and it's just this kind of like optional thing that a Lightning node might be able to support. And it just kind of adds like some contact metadata to the beginning of Lightning Invoices memo. And if a Lightning wallet doesn't support it, it's no big deal. It just goes into, it's still plain readable memo text But to the Lightning wallets that do support it, it provides a nice little UX advantage. So bolts, pretty critical, blips, kind of optional.
Awesome, thank you. And then there are a few other ones. There's the best name out of all of them is something called balls, I think, which what does that stand for? Bitcoin and Lightning.
Layer specs.
Sorry, Bitcoin and Lightning.
Bitcoin and Lightning layer specs. Yeah.
Yeah, and that has two subtopics, which I think for LSPs and WebBTC, but don't really need to go further into that. And beyond, so that's kind of just technical standards that requires a lot of discussion, and because everybody kind of needs to do it the same way. Then there are other things which are UX standards. For example, the unified QR code is based on the BIP21 URL scheme.
You got it.
Which allows for combining an on-chain and Lightning res and some other information in kind of the same piece of string. But the unified QR code is not part of that spec. And presenting a QR code that represents BIP21 in that particular part of the user experience in order to get better interoperability between wallets, it's also not really a spec. It's just kind of a really good way to solve this particular user problem and this need for just making sure that people can really smoothly pay with each other. So it's not a technical specification or a standard. It's just a really good way to solve this problem.
It's a use case.
It's a solution for a use case or a problem, right? A kind of a technique, maybe. But I think for the purpose of this conversation, we'll just also call that a standard, right? Standardized way of doing things for some type of user benefit.
Okay.
Right? Or how would you think about it, Jones?
Well, you see, not to bring the conversation into stray off too much, but I think one of the challenges that we have, one of the problems and why we're having this conversation is that they are the adoption of some of these specifications, standards, etc., is sometimes quite slow. So if there's no standards body which is enforcing the adoption of these things or getting people to implement them, then what you have is some kind of loose participation, right? People don't necessarily have to be forced to do it, like with the bolts, right?
The clips.
Well, bolts specifically, because Stephen mentioned that bolts, you're not a Lightning node unless you implement all of the bolts. But you don't have to implement BIP21. You don't have to implement unified QR codes. So I see those most as specifications. And maybe the challenge here that we're having is, how do we get more people to implement things, and maybe leaning more on the side of, trying to create standards, because things are more specs right now and not many people respect them or find them useful in order to implement.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's the big challenge. And I think it might be helpful to give some more examples. So I think, what was it? BIP. What's the BIP for the recovery phrases? Mnemonic seeds.
Is it 39? Right.
39. Okay. So in there, for example, is it's interesting. There's a word list of words that can be part of these recovery phrases, and it's in English. But it also contains a list of 10 other word lists in 10 other languages. But it also recommends to not implement them because most wallets don't support them. So most recovery phrases are in English, and for English speakers, we can say, yeah, it's so easy to remember. We can almost, put it in, actually memorize it. But then that doesn't really work for an Indian person or a Japanese person or for someone for whom English is really kind of a cryptic, way of, writing, I guess.
Not a first language.
Not a first language, let's put it that way. Good one. So, but then it's not adopted, and I looked into that a little bit, and one of the problems is that it's the chicken and egg problem, and that it applies to a lot of these other standards as well. Because let's say a wallet creates a recovery phrase in Chinese, and 99% of other wallets don't allow for the import. And this first wallet goes away, then a lot of users are stuck now with Chinese recovery phrases that they cannot import anywhere else, right? So the first wallet doesn't really want to try this or implement this because it could potentially put the user funds at risk. A solution to that one is that you first get all the wallets to support import for all of these different languages, and then they roll out the feature of creating recovery phrases in all those languages. So there are kind of techniques and ways, but they just require a lot of coordination. And an individual wallet team might just be so busy with the stuff that they have going on anyways, that they just might not have the bandwidth to look into this or try to push this forward or coordinate. And I think maybe that's where the design community and other people who are maybe more active in kind of this I don't know, coordinating role might be able to help.
So one of the things there that is apparent with what you're talking about is like why these specs or standards are important is for interoperability.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we could also see this in like other areas. For instance, channel state in a Lightning node. Right. It's important to be able to swap to another implementation if you need to. But if we don't have like standardized formats that people are using, then it becomes very difficult to do so. So this is actually very important for giving users choice and freedom to move about and migrate to whatever service provider that they want. One other way that we can get this kind of adoption happening with the chicken and egg problem that you're talking about is to get a bunch of new wallets to implement these functionalities, right? So there's a project in Bolt Fun, which is in the tournament where they're actually trying to translate mnemonics into a whole bunch of different African languages. So that's quite interesting. I'm not sure if wallets are going to come out of it, but I think having those initiatives are also going to be important as well.
Yeah, and the damage is actually real. So Mo and I had a talk with a wallet recovery professional. Mm-hmm. So the clients come to this person and they say, yeah, I can't access my wallet anymore. And a lot of times, he said a lot of the clients come after several years when it's like they realize, oh, this Bitcoin that I stored actually has it's meaningful of value to me. I really want to, invest the time and money to hire someone to get this recovered. And a lot of the problems he encounters, he said, is that they come from old wallets that did not implement any standards. So they may have come from times when maybe the standards were not even defined, or even there weren't even any standards, and every team kind of tried to figure that out. And these wallets were created before kind of something like a standard emerged, like a best way of doing things. And that is some real meaningful damage to the people who find themselves in that position. Sometimes it's lack of a standard can be just like a minor inconvenience, but sometimes it can also be really, really, really meaningful in the space.
So how do we move past that? Now we understand the importance of having these standards getting adopted and stuff like that. But what's the next steps then?
That's where our man Steven comes back into place. Steven, I know you are, I don't know, intentionally and unintentionally, you found yourself in the role of working on two particular campaigns as part of your design community activity of kind of helping, promote these type of standards in, I think, a very good community-driven way.
Oh, thanks, I guess. You just want to talk about those a little bit, or
yeah, I think they're really good examples.
Yeah, the two he's talking about we did were the BitcoinQR.dev and wintaproot.org. So these were a lot of people were involved in each of these projects, the basic gist of these is like for the BIP21 unified QR website, we were trying to track and see which wallets would support scanning this type of QR code, which weren't kind of the chicken and the egg problem like he was describing before, was that it's kind of dangerous for a project to just switch over to generating these types of QR codes by default if nobody else in the ecosystem will support scanning them. So it doesn't mean that everybody in the ecosystem needs to make these by default, but if everybody can support scanning them, then wallets can choose if they want to make this their default. It's just not an option in the current system. Not everybody's going to want to do that. So, just by doing that, it facilitates kind of a community discussion, just by kind of, like I said, just keeping track of them, opening up a pathway to people to contribute by testing wallets and submitting their feedback to the site. We did a similar thing with Taproot, trying to test for the pay to Taproot address format. And still kind of getting data coming in on that one. But it's a similar kind of thing there where it's like, if not enough wallets, support are confirmed as being able to, receive the pay to Taproot address format, it just makes it a little bit more difficult for other wallet developers to start adding support. So yeah, it's a way of doing it, and I mean, I think it's a format that could work for other types of standards discussions within Bitcoin as well. Just to have kind of a central place to discuss it. Kind of, I think another component to it that's important is not just the website, but having like a discussion place for it as well. So, one thing that could be is a Slack workspace, just like some of these are just, we link to Slack channels within Bitcoin Design, but like also when Taproot has a Twitter handle. So it's just a matter, I think, of like making sure that there's some kind of discussion forum backing the website, so that you can get into a little bit more in-depth discussion about it when needed.
Awesome, thanks. And I think part of the website was also the actual snippets of code to implement this change, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's something that made that was kind of unique on Win Taproot. I mean, Jesse Posner updated the I think it was the Python implementation of Beck32M, and so he had kind of identified that making this change was actually really simple. It was like two or three lines of code, something in that ballpark, and so we're able to put that on the website. Show it too. Now, having said that, I mean, it's still like, obviously everybody's code base is going to use a different language and, be set up in a different way. So, I mean, the exact, procedure for, adding support is really going to vary depending on your project. But just by, it's nice to be able to provide that, show that, it helps to make the case by saying that it's a smaller change. But and it's good to be able to provide at least an example of the change you're proposing.
That's a really good one. And out of those projects, how has the response been so far? What do you think? Or can you measure that? Or
yeah, I mean, it's hard to measure. I mean, the thing is with Win Taproot, I've honestly haven't been eyeing that one as much since I've launched it because I've been busy with other projects, but Merch would probably be able to speak to that one a lot more, and maybe even Steve, who's in the audience here. But I would say in terms of BIP21, that was pretty successful, just in that it got Cash App involved, and so now they've added, they've actually made BIP21 the default for send and receive. That's been really cool, and I tested that a couple weeks ago, and it works as advertised. So it was real cool seeing kind of an app with a big user base adopt the change. And we've had a couple of other wallet projects add support here and there along the way. I think Strike added at least, I want to say they added at least scanning support, which was really awesome. That was the main thing that we were really pushing for with projects. So I'd say at least on that one, that it's been really good response.
What do you think motivated Cash App to adopt the standard?
I mean, I think what motivated Cash App was probably just I think they favor a really, really simple UX. Like, you know, before they had implemented Bitcoin, I mean, they were obviously just a, you know, traditional kind of fintech app, but, you know, they've always, you know, I think taken pride in that real simple UX. You know, you go to the home screen and it's just like, you know, it's immediately ready to make a payment. It's like the primary action. It's Cash App, you know, it's for making payments. And you get to the home screen and it's like, you know, you're ready to type type in your payment amount or your receive amount as soon as you get there. So, I mean, I think that just the distinction between Bitcoin and Lightning, like Bitcoin on chain and a Bitcoin Lightning invoice, was probably just a distinction that they felt complicated the UX, if I had to guess.
Yeah, good one. Thanks. And do you have any other projects in the works right now along this line?
Oh, right now, no. Me, I don't. But I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if another one popped up on my radar in the next month or two here. But
what a coincidence! I think we have some candidates here because Steve here he suggested that you know, we look into Bolt 12 and async payments as another potential project to discuss. That maybe we'd also try to encourage adoption. And what are those about, John's? Steven, do you know?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that.
Maybe speak to those.
Yeah, I mean, Bolt 12 is basically, you know, this is to put it simply, you know, in like, you know, for more like UX focused terms, since that's what we're here doing, is it gives you a reusable QR code. You know, the big problem we've been dealing with in Lightning is the fact that invoices are one use only, and the sender a lot of times has to generate them on their own. So Bolt 12 is one such solution to that. There's also other solutions like LNURL that are already out there. That's kind of, you know, it provides a solution to the problem in a different way by, like, you run a web server alongside your Lightning node. But Bolt 12 is kind of like a Lightning native way of doing that. So user, you know, could, you know, in theory, this could be, you know, one component of solving the mythical tip jar. Like, that's what everyone always wants in Lightning. It's like, how do I make a Lightning tip jar that just, you know, the user downloads it, turns it on, and then they can receive tips any time of day, and all of that. And so Bolt 12 is pretty cool in that regard. And then there's only one thing that Bolt 12 doesn't. There's one thing that Bolt 12 doesn't solve, and that is that. Oh my God, I just don't know what's going around here. I'm trying to talk to a phone. One person's like on the phone pressing buttons. Another person is giving me a hat. I'm sorry. I'm so confused right now. Okay. Anyways, okay. Yeah. So I thought I was just going to poker face my way through that, but I'm only human. So anyways, Bolt 12, you know, that it works really well in terms of you can just have one QR code and you're done. And that's fine. What it doesn't solve is the problem of the user being able to receive payments when they're offline. In other words, when their phone is in their pocket. So async payments could be a solution to that. Async payments, I mean, again, just to put it in simple UX terms, it allows you to receive payments when the node is offline. It does so using some sort of tricks between the LSPs, the Lightning service providers. There's this messaging that goes on between the LSPs that enables this asynchronous payment to happen. It just kind of lets one of the LSPs essentially hold on to the payment for the user until they come back online, but there's no risk of the LSP taking the funds or anything like that. You know, more or less trustless. So yeah, async payments could be something. And so if you combine those two, if you combine Bolt 12 and you combine async payments, that could kind of solve the mythical tip jar problem. which would be pretty cool. But, you know, it's not like, you know, these are not things that, you know, we have wide, you know, industry support for.
Awesome, thanks for that. So to put it in really, really simple terms, you know, if we get these things adopted, we're going to have a much better experience. We're going to have more tools to play with, and it'll be easier to actually build more stuff on top of these things. It'll enable all kinds of new features and stuff to build. So I think it's a pretty good thing to kind of push forward to. So you know, Stephen has been kind of the champion of these types of initiatives for, I don't know, this year, I guess, last 6 months or so. And the question is now, and the invite is, you know, how can we get together in more ways and to get this stuff happen more quickly? And something that I wanted to bring up in when this discussion topic was proposed in the Slack, a developer very quickly responded to this and said, like, yes, this is great, but, you know, my to-do list is so long and, you know, it keeps growing all the time. So having more people come in and say, like, hey, you should adopt the standard, you know, let's do this, might not actually be so productive or helpful. So a part of the challenge is also, you know, how do we make this really, really easy to do?
No, I think actually the community wanting and demanding these kinds of functionalities, if they see the use case, if it's presented to them and their understanding of it, this kind of like puts it higher up on the priority list and the backlog for these projects, from these developers. But, you know, it's like, why should I implement this now when I have these other things to do? If the community starts to demand it, then the why becomes a lot more apparent.
Okay, so I think I see where you're coming from, Johns. I finally understand why somebody placed the hat on me a couple seconds ago. It was a director's hat. Everyone's asking me to direct a short film that you know, it's going to be like some kind of like late 80s Apple Vision, you know, Vision Quest, you know, film or something. I have to paint a picture of a future where Bolt 12 and async payments have been implemented widely across the ecosystem, and, you know, activists are downloading Lightning tip jars onto their phone and just, you know, receiving payments 24 hours a day, and that's what's going to paint the use case for people. And then when they see the use case, then we're going to be able to, you know, safely demand support from developers.
Then they'll be woken up.
Yeah.
They'll be activated.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, why not? Why not? I mean, see, that's the biggest thing. I think some of these things, they emerge from all kinds of different corners. Somebody comes up with like the technical description or way to do something well. A designer comes up with some UX technique or some UI design, some flow. A researcher discovers something in an interview or so. And these things kind of need to be bubbled up and explained and made practical. So it's not just, you know, this professional that kind of understands the value in it, or a small group of people that are in this area. But it needs to be kind of translated in a way to make really tangible and simple and easy to get, where it's like, of course I want this, right? Let's make it happen. And could be a movie.
Okay, so there's two sides to this, right? One side is to the campaign to get adoption for whatever spec, standard, or new thing is on the block, right? Then the other one is once these things have been adopted, whichever they are, it opens up possibilities for designers to implement new features like contacts or something else. Just have to put that one in there. But in the campaigning phase, right, what are the opportunities that designers, people inside the Bitcoin design community, what role can they play? Designers, copywriters, etc. What role can they play in this? How could they be a part of these things? Christoph, you have any ideas about that?
Yeah, I think we need all of it. I think we need the people who understand the problem and the solution in very deep and meaningful way. And then we need to have like a colorful team of just different people who can then create something tangible out of it. So, because whether it's a movie or a website, you want to find something that's appropriate to whatever this is solving. If it's best illustrated via whatever, an illustration, or it has to be a text thing or a clickable prototype where people can actually try this out, or some video or so, you just need to find the best way to communicate this thing. And it's actually a really fun thing to come up with a little bit of a kind of a near future vision of something. I love doing these types of things, right? Because it's like, this is where we're going, right? So I like these types of challenges. And there's interest right now in actually forming a small team to specifically look at Bolt 12 and async payments to do exactly that. So if you're listening, if you're interested, or you don't have to understand Bolt 12 and async payments right now. I don't totally do. Part of this project is also to learn about this and then find the most meaningful way to kind of get this stuff out there and explain it and get it adopted. Then you should definitely reach out, either one of the people here who are speaking, or just anyone in the Bitcoin design community, because I think we're going to fairly quickly form a mini project around this and try to get this a little bit off the ground. First by a little bit more conversation, and then hopefully kind of moving into a little bit of an organized project. And it might be a website, it might be TikTok videos, I don't know. Really just kind of depends on what the outcome of it will be.
So there's the information that has to be gathered and presented. The ways in which it's presented is then it can be very diverse, and people can decide to choose whether it's a film, TikTok, like you said, or presenting some of this information which was gathered and put together in a conference or at a local meetup or something like that. This is other ways to spread awareness, doing stickers, and basically anything you do guerrilla marketing style to get the word out, essentially.
Bolt 12 inside stickers.
That's good.
If anyone even remembers, is that still a thing? Intel inside stickers? Is that a thing?
Yeah, people still do them.
People still do? Okay.
Yeah, they just put whatever instead
Something
of Intel
inside
there. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'd kind of like to see a comparison of the, just like a side-by-side comparison of some of the UI flows between with Bolt 12, without Bolt 12, and with async payments and without async payments. Maybe instead of a UI flow, what you really need is a comic strip of the person, texting their friend an invoice, and then the friend being like, hey, it's expired, or the friend later being the payment failing, and then oh, here, text me again, here, I'll set a longer expiry, and then, oh, sorry bro, I put the phone back in my pocket. And I mean, yeah, you could just carry that piece of comedy gold for as long as you wanted to, for as many frames, and you'd get the point across, I think, versus the async payment one should in theory work the first time.
Yeah. So you're going to lead that project, Stephen?
Yeah, why not?
That's it. That's the enthusiasm we need here.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Is baseline acceptable for you?
Yeah.
I'm glad that I've exceeded your baseline expectations.
Yeah, but it was interesting with when Taproot, it lends itself right, the Taproot, the carrot. You drew illustrations of bunnies, right? Rabbits.
Oh yeah.
Is there a difference? Holding these different, what's it called? Carrots.
Yeah.
Right. It was a really fun and playful site. It'd be I don't know. Can you create something else around async payments? Doesn't lend itself as well, but I'm sure we'll come up.
I'm just gonna go to Dribble and see what the design trend is for that day, and just imitate that.
Well, you can also type it into an AI art generator and kind of see what happens. Like future Bitcoin wallet supporting Bolt 12 or something, and just kind of in the style of, I don't know,
future
MC Escher,
and just kind of use that as graphics.
Yeah, that would work.
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
I'd love a website in the style of MC Escher. That would be like the pinnacle of my career.
Christoph is full of good ideas.
I'm like a random word generator, and it just kind of sounds like it's a creative idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So, by the way, has anyone in the audience has kind of questions around this? We have, for example, hey Hampus, Sierra in the audience, you're a wallet developer. Michael in the audience, also Albie from Albie, maybe a few other people there. If you have questions or comments on this topic, because I'm sure you deal with this all the time, then feel free to raise your hand. We'll add you as speakers if it works, because it actually did not work earlier for someone else that I tried to invite. But we'll try it. We'll try it. So
Hampus is requested.
Okay, I think Hampus, you requested it. So I'm going to press invite to speak here, and maybe it will work. I just pressed it.
And Pavli also requested to.
Pavli is our speaker.
Well, he raised his hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm doing the hardest work here, and I found you guys a bar for tonight. So yeah, that's the only way to reach you guys, because nobody's listening, because you've been so deep into the Twitter space. So just wanted to notify you via Twitter space that I'm doing the important work. That's all.
Hey, Pavel, you're doing the Lord's work.
Go and check out Pav's latest tweet, and you'll see how important his work is.
Yeah, so Hampus, I'm sorry. It might not come through to you. I pressed the invite to speak button like 3 times already, and it's simply not working, apparently. We're trying something else here, but yeah, this, I don't know. It's a Twitter Spaces bug, apparently.
Oh, sweet. Let's see if Johns can take care of business now that he's a co-host.
Yeah.
Oh, Arvin.
Oh, we have a request. Maybe you can try to request, Hampus. Yeah. Yeah, give that a try.
Arvin, what up?
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Sure can.
Okay, nice. Okay, so I actually have 2 things based on some recent things that we kind of ran into with Galoy and Bitcoin Beach and stuff. With some standards things. Well, it's not really standards. I guess I don't know if it's standards, but okay, so the first one is we were looking at sort of all the things people are doing around LN, URL withdrawal, and NFC cards, bolt cards. So like that's been really popular on Twitter. It's we see like in on the Isle of Man and like I guess wherever Coin Corner is, you see a lot of things happening around that. So we were looking at whether we should implement it and how we'd go about doing it. And one thing that came up was that like we have people who are on the ground in El Salvador, and like we kind of took a look around at what people are doing there, like people from users of our wallet, and I guess merchants and people around them. And what we saw was that there isn't a lot of like NFC card adoption in terms of people actually using it or other wallets supporting it in that area, or like payment terminals being able to receive an NFC like tap, that sort of thing. So I guess where that comes around to is how, if I'm a wallet developer, if I'm somebody who's looking to pull a new standard into my wallet, like how do we demonstrate that there's actual usage versus just hype? Or how do we, I mean, I know it's a chicken and egg type of thing. You can't get usage unless people actually implement it, and if nobody's implementing it, you're not going to see usage. But at least from our end, you're right. There's a lot of things to do. So there is sort of a prioritization of things, and like from a dev's perspective, that's kind of that's sort of the decision we're leaning to right now. At least with the bolt card stuff, is like, okay, we're not seeing usage, we're not seeing like wide adoption in the place that we wanna like we operate in. So we're not going to do that until we, I guess, see a bit more traction and a bit more uptake. So I don't know if that's relevant to this discussion. I think it is, but it's that, how do you get around that sort of chicken and egg problem? How do you like, for developers who are going to wait and look for the things in the ecosystem to catch up, or other people to start using it? There's a bit of a chicken and egg thing going on there. How do you, what's a good way to tackle that? Because I feel like that would be an issue. I mean, there's always the experimental side of it, where it's that some wallets want to be on the cutting edge. They want to experiment with certain things, and they want to kind of try out different features and different ways to get users on board and improve the experience and stuff. But then there's other cases where it's just, there's already so much in the pipeline that it's tough to prioritize a new thing unless you see like some sort of demonstrated uptake. So I guess that's my my input on that from an active sort of developer process that we're going through.
Yeah, that seems sensible. I mean, it's like any feature you add, I imagine, is just going to be like time that you spend coding something that you could have spent coding something else. Do you how do you think, I mean, like, so is it a sort of thing when you're thinking about building something, like, is it always like strictly I must see um, proof that it's been in use? Because like one thing I think about is like with the whole Lightning industry, I feel like Lightning was once this technology that was kind of theoretical, and then it kind of been this thing that was like, well, it's implemented, but it's kind of rough, and you kind of had to have this like long-term vision with Lightning to be able to think, okay, it could scale to be this global payments network, and so I should start building products on top of it. For when it is a global payments network. I mean, how do you think about like, are there any times when you've implemented a feature that hasn't gotten adoption, but because you think it could long term become a viable feature?
Yeah, I think that comes more from the experimenting side of things. Because okay, so there's need to haves and nice to haves. So that like certain things are just need to haves. You have a pressing problem right now. There's something that's presented that could be a solution for it. So like for us, for example, being able to have a static QR code for a vendor that they can just print and put up in their shop and accept payments. That was a need to have for us because of how just because of how like people deal with mobile phones and stuff and share accounts and that sort of thing. So that's where we did the LNURL Lightning address implementations, just because it solved a direct problem. But for nice to haves, things that maybe don't solve a direct problem that we have right now, it would be nice to have, but it's not something that's pressing or something that is breaking things. I think, well, an approach that we've taken so far is that it doesn't get priority in our usual sort of dev cycles, dev processes. But what we try to do is kind of put it into this experimentation bucket, where it's that if we think it's something that's interesting that we're seeing other wallets or people in the community doing, we would try to maybe attach a bounty to it and incentivize it in that way. But we won't directly allocate dev time to it. We'd sort of say, hey, this would be nice to have. We can't do it. If somebody else wants to do it, that would be great. We'd kind of support it, review it, and try to pull it in. But yeah, I think that's kind of the distinction we make right now. It's kind of that need to have versus nice to have thing, and kind of using that to factor into the prioritization.
Yeah, so I think that shows the opportunity for designers to make it very enticing to these wallet developers. Thanks for sharing your perspective, by the way. It's up to us designers to make it enticing for the wallet developers to want to implement these things, and also for the wider community also to see what can be possible, or to have a vision of what's possible. Because yeah, if we probably have to wait just for the developers to implement this alone, we'll probably end up waiting quite a long time. And also, what is the way in which it will be implemented? I guess that's another part. BIP21 was implemented for quite some time. Bolt 12, Bolt 11 was also implemented in a bunch of Lightning wallets, and all the unified QR code is just adding a Lightning parameter which is specified in Bolt 11. So all these things have been there. It was just never combined, and design is kind of like that area in which you can kind of like explore these kinds of use cases and do problem solving and quite cheaply. And people get excited about it when you see a screenshot on Twitter or wherever else about or a movie, Stephen, about what the future can look like. So yeah, thanks for the perspective. I think I think it's basically up to the designers to start pushing, imagining the future and pushing that out to the community and to wallet developers to make them see the value so that they prioritize it a bit higher. I see we have a couple more speakers up here as well. John, what's up?
Hey guys, I'm sorry I missed the spaces so far. I just saw your link in Telegram and I just wanted to join in because obviously specs are something on my mind for lots of reasons, including recent debates and also the kind of LSP specs that we do, the web specs that we do with the group, the balls group, and like you just mentioned, BIP21. We're trying to work on extending that and to provide a better user experience between merchants and consumers. And so, yeah, the topic's very interesting to me. I don't have a question per se, so much as, I am here to either, wax philosophical on any topic that you guys are interested in my perspective on, or answer any questions about, the Bitcoin and Lightning Layer specs group that we have, or, anything related to this design and UX, because these are all very important things to me and to our company.
So far, we've spoken about BIP21, Bolt 12. You mentioned LSP spec. Since this is a conversation among designers mostly, and how they can get involved in, like pushing the adoption of these things in different wallets, perhaps you can give us some background on what kind of UX opportunities will be available by having a spec for LSPs. To the end user or for designers even?
Sure. So not to be too shilly, but it's just true that a great example is to look at what we're doing with the new BitKit wallet that we put out, because that is tightly integrated with an LSP. And so just the idea of having an LSP that you can rely on and soon, being able to choose which LSP you rely on provides you the opportunity to really start abstracting away some of the tricky parts of Lightning. And I think eventually all, or, the great majority of them. And so it's really relevant to UX and designers, because you can go from a person having no clue what to do to get on Lightning to just having, queues in an application that say, pay instantly, and then throw them into a user flow that just either does like we do in BitKit, for example. We have one option that's just a slider, and it says, how much of your money do you want to be instantly spendable? And then that actually auto configures a channel with sensible defaults and tells the user, here's what it'll cost to do this. And they can agree to the fee, and now they're on Lightning. And you combine that with things like zero-conf channels and eventually things like splicing, and you can basically hide Lightning entirely from the user eventually. And so we also have another UX that we're doing by depending on the LSP for letting the user configure it a little more deeply, where we ask them how much do you want to be able to spend instantly? How much do we want to be able to receive instantly? And then they can also configure how long the minimum uptime for the channel will be. Granted, we don't actually close channels yet, but you do need to have a minimum commitment that the person is agreeing to, and that they can configure that. So yeah, I think the LSP spec is basically just a way that any Lightning node that wants to formally provide liquidity, and by extension, routing and connectivity and reliability, and perform as a Lightning service provider. Now there is a specification that we can all use, so that way people, a wallet can give the user the power to switch between any service. Marketplaces can also begin doing this soon. We created an LSP marketplace kind of spec, which is extending these concepts into, what is all the information that a marketplace might want to use or convey to users in order for them to make a decision about which Lightning node to do business with. And so we're going to be implementing, both of these specs in BlockTank, our LSP service, which is what's integrated with BitKit. And probably I'm going to assume, because Breeze has participated in creating these things, that we're going to kick off them supporting them as well. We were hoping that zero-fee routing would do the same, but they seem to be retiring. But basically, we have several different LSP projects that are involved with these spec creations, including some marketplaces. And so, in the coming months, hopefully what you'll see is some integrations with services like Lightning Network Plus and more wallets connecting to more LSPs and crossing paths and being interoperable. And so this will mean that designers will more and more be able to expect that they can rely on these kinds of things when they're making design choices in their wallet apps and other apps that need to kind of connect to Lightning.
Yeah, I think we were discussing today about the need for more competition in the LSP space. That's going to be great for users. Also, different kinds of metrics or indicators on like how users make choices. How they make choices in choosing their LSP of the LSP that they want. But all in all these specs and stuff could get written up about, but we're going to need people to start adopting them. And we're hoping that with some kind of framework or guidance from the Bitcoin design community, perhaps we'll be able to kind of like help these various initiatives and specifications, which are really important for interoperability, for allowing users to have a choice, to be able to easily migrate from one service to another, which is very tied to the ethos of Bitcoin, right? Hopefully we as designers will be able to help those projects, those initiatives be able to get adoption or at least get some notice, and then the community decides, the developers decide, and whatnot.
Sure, I have a couple replies to that. One is we would love to have more designers involved in the spec work, or at least making the specs presentable and accessible by people, that more awareness, et cetera. And so, if you're interested in all this, ask me or John's for how, the chat room links and such, but you can pretty much find all of this stuff if you go to balls.dev. And there's a GitHub org, and there's all kinds of stuff. And then also you mentioned, how users choose. Well, that's essentially the concept of reputation. And that is actually the next project that the LSP spec group is going to be launching and working on after the marketplace spec. We're working with at least Synonym and Alliage from Bolt's Exchange.
Bolt Observer.
Bolt Observer, sorry. And he's very interested in reputation as well. And it's a tough problem. So we're going to try to figure out, what is the kind of minimum way to approach this and express it for marketplaces, et cetera. So yeah, we definitely agree and are on the same page as far as the problems that need to be solved, and also with people needing to actually adopt this stuff so it can get momentum. And so that's the other side project that the group is doing. The LSP group is now actual business development for the specs. And so that's why we're going to try to get, Synonym will commit to supporting these for Blocktank and our products, and we're going to try to make sure that Breeze is on board and get other people in the group to actually implement this thing so we can get momentum.
All right, Steven, you gotta work on that toolkit ASAP, because there seems to be a lot of interest in getting specs adopted. So that's on you.
All right, tomorrow morning.
Right. We're going almost on the top of the hour. There's a couple minutes left. I'm gonna hand this over to our MC, Christoph.
Goofballs. Okay, thank you for this. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for this conversation. John, Arvin, everyone for chiming in. If you find this useful, I think we're going to continue this conversation around standards, what role we can play in, and also just start trying to get actively working on some of these things, like the stuff we talked about, try to understand them, see if we can simplify them, think if we can kind of show kind of before and after or so, and just kind of see what if we can find good ways to help make this stuff happen. And if you're interested, follow the links that John mentioned, or in Bitcoin Design in our Slack. I think in the general channel there are already one or two discussions happening specifically on Bolt 12 and async payments. There's interest right there. But if you think there are other standards too, start another conversation or so. And I think then we will just see you on Twitter or on Slack then. And thanks all for joining in. And we'll wrap it up here for today. Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye.